was all at stake. It said that you would like to institute a single-payer health care program and raise taxes. I think they mean roll back the tax cuts that they passed this year. What do you make of that?
Well, the second part there is accurate. I do think that we should revisit tax legislation.
All right, revisit it or nix it? What's the deal here? A lot of Republicans are saying that's the equivalent of hiking taxes on scores of Americans. The National Taxpayers Union senior fellow, Mattie Duppler, and Daily Caller News Foundation editor-in-chief Chris Bedford. Chris, ended with you. How real a possibility is that? They come in, they start dismantling it in presumably the House.
Yeah, it would have to begin, of course, in the House of Representatives if they're able to get that back, Neil, which is not guaranteed for certain. And statements like this from Nancy Pelosi are not really helping the case. You saw there, the D.C. media, a lot of them are trying to say, well, you know, it's not a tax hike. You're just going to roll back tax cuts, doing anything they possibly can to give her an out on that question. And then Pelosi goes forward and says, no, it's accurate. It's accurate. We're going to do that. Most Americans can see that this is going to really impact their bottom line. And while Republicans don't have enough quite to run on just based only on their tax cuts, they can certainly run against a tax hike pretty easily.
You know, Mattie, when I'm looking at this, I mean, they're going to argue, and Nancy Pelosi has been famous for saying what workers were getting and sharing the wealth from their bosses was the equivalent of crumbs. Yep. But the fact that Cory Booker and others have kind of echoed similar sentiment means this has been poll tested by them. I would think.
Neil, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like the Democrats are kind of coming apart at the seams here. They're no longer pretending that they are the vanguards of the middle class by going straight for the heart of this tax cut. As Chris said, you know, even the D.C. media was trying to give Pelosi the out there saying, oh, well, you know, maybe you're not trying to argue that you want a tax hike. And she unequivocally said, that's exactly what I want. Now, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that was passed in December is a bill that gives tax relief at every echelon of income in this country. More than that, it simplifies taxes for a majority of Americans in this country. 9 in 10 taxpayers now just get to take the standard deduction. And by saying that they want to go back to the way things were, they want to essentially unreform the tax code.
But what is the unreformed part of it, Mattie? One of the ideas I heard espoused by a couple of liberals and Democrats was this notion that take the advantages away for rich individuals, but it's not so easily untangleable, is it? I mean, it's all or nothing.
It really, what that does is it displays a complete lack of creativity for Democrats to say that, well, what we'll do is we'll look at what happened in December and then just nibble around the edges of the things that we like. Look, the individual side of things was not made permanent. There will be a vote in the House. Speaker Ryan has said that they're going to vote to make that side permanent. And that's what Democrats are going to have to explain. When they decide to vote against making individual tax relief the law of the land for all Americans, they can't just say, oh, we would really do this if only it weren't for the rich being able to keep the tax rates that were put into place in December, because that means that they're holding tax relief hostage for all Americans. So I want Democrats to continue to explain that, why they think that their class warfare rhetoric is so effective. They want to keep tax relief hostage for all Americans. Go right ahead and try that. I don't think it's going to play well in November.
You know, Chris, there must be something a little bit to what Mattie was saying as well, because that Nancy Pelosi is not discussed much on the stump. Republicans are discussing her a good deal for obvious reasons, but not so Democrats, who kind of wince at the notion of even using the word crumbs or anything like that. So where do you think this is going, and the prospects for how this plays out in November?
It's hard to get much agreement these days on anything amongst the Republican Party. One thing you can get people to agree on, conservatives, libertarians, business Republicans, all of them, is that their dislike of Nancy Pelosi. It completely unites them, and the Democrats realize that. So you see a lot of candidates in Pennsylvania and all around the country kind of pushing away and saying, we're not going to back Nancy Pelosi explicitly to be Speaker of the House if we take the majority.
In other words, you're saying it's not a given that even if they do take the House, that she's going to be their leader. She's made it very clear she wants to be and thinks she should be. I guess she's great at fundraising and all the stuff that's vital to that job. But it sounds to me that she's going to run into a buzzsaw of resistance.
Yeah, she rakes in the money. She's a phenomenal fundraiser in San Francisco, New York. The issue, yeah, exactly. The issue that she's going to run into here is that a lot of her base don't want her. They want somebody younger. They want somebody who's got different ideas. They want somebody who doesn't cause them necessarily as much trouble as Pelosi has caused them. But she's made it clear now, as you were just pointing out, not only does she intend to be Speaker, but who she intends to appoint to be in charge of different House committees. Yeah. That shows an amazing amount of confidence on her part.
You know, Mattie, I'm just wondering, after the races last night, I don't know what's going to happen in the House. I keep hearing this consensus is building, and like you, I always get leery of consensus views, but that the House is gone. But I saw a couple of races now where at least at a minimum 3 Senate seats are at a minimum. Democratic seats are vulnerable, where the Republicans could actually pick up ground there.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, yeah, Neil, I think that there's no reason that Republicans can't look at November and be optimistic about their chances. And that's because, not just because they have the Tax Cut and Jobs Act to run on, they have the effects of that to run on. As we've been talking about this whole segment, right, Americans are richer now than they were last year. They will be richer in November than they were in the previous November. And that's because of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And that's because they're getting tax relief on their paycheck. Their paychecks are bigger. They're getting bonuses from their employers. Wages are rising because business climates are better because of tax reform that's happened. All of these reasons, Americans are better off, and Americans tend to vote with their pocketbook. They tend to look at their circumstances and be pretty excited about changes that make them better off than they were before. Democrats, as you saw with Nancy Pelosi today, their only vision for the country is taking us backward. It's taking us back to where we were when we were in a recession, when wages weren't rising, when the tax reform, when the tax system was one that benefited the politically connected and the elite. Americans don't want that, and I'm pretty confident that the more Republicans talk about why things are better off for Americans, the more Americans and voters will respond to that.
So you hope. But Chris, I mean, there are other people who say that, you know, Republicans just can't get past their own inability to control fiscal issues. What do you make of that?
You know, it's amazing. They don't have nearly the discipline that a lot of the Democrats have. They passed a massive spending bill, basically, because they were handed the crack pipe of military spending and say, go on, take a hit, and pass this massive spending bill. The president even said he wasn't going to do it again, but I predict that they might happen again, because if they don't figure out their spending for next year before they leave town for August, they come back just before an election, we're going to end up with the same kind of mess where Republicans are passing a massive spending bill. They will not shut down the government, I'm guessing, right before an election, and then President Trump is forced to go back on his word and sign a new massive bill. Could get messy. Still early. Guys, thank you both very much. The Dow up 207 points here. Oil now in and out of 4-year highs. All of that.